So when you show the 2, it's 2 minutes left, right?
Yes,
Or
it's a
double
countdown.
check. Okay, ready? All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick. Thank you all for showing up to this required class period to hear my speech today. I'd like to talk to you about organic products versus non-organic products. This is kind of a growing thing. Organics have become more popular recently, and I'm here to talk about it's not all just a lie, it's not just a label thrown on there. So let me give you a little bit of facts about non-organic foods first. So non-organic foods, a lot of them are grown with IPM, which is integrated pest management, which is pesticides, growth hormones, and things like that that are put on to keep from bugs, keep them to grow stronger products, pretty much take out having to fight off all these bugs the old school fashioned way, which was non-organic things is their goal. So taking off the IPM website, integrated pest management, which means using pesticides and chemicals to protect the foods and increase their productivity. IPM is an approach to solving pest problems by applying our knowledge about pests to prevent them from damaging crops, harming animals, infesting buildings, and otherwise interfering with their livelihood or enjoyment of life. IPM is responding to pest management with the least risk option, is what they say, overall. So here's some of the given pesticide hazards right off the IPM website, which is for the North American Institute. So they say pesticide hazards include acute, immediate toxicity to humans and other non-target organisms, chronic or long-term toxicity such as cancer and potential contaminant air or ground and surface water. So they say that on their website, even though it is the least risk option, but there's still problems with this. So, like supporters of IPM grown and toxicologists would argue that the risk is so small, less than 1%. But I mean, honestly, who wants to be that 1%? Also, they say less than 1% on the overall food products. But how do you know that the pesticides didn't get taken off of farmers' grow over here, or he used the chemicals on this farm? Every farm is different. So it's kind of hard for them to regulate so much, but they try to anyway. So, I mean, and they say that they're doing the best job that they can. So, back to a little more IBM. So, IBM is a lot better here in America than it is in other countries because we have the chemicals, the money, like we're able to regulate this much better. In third world countries, it is not. It's horrible out there. They have, they substitute chemicals that aren't the right chemicals. They have poor misuse of labeling, misuse on what products. They just kind of use whatever to help it grow. Hopefully it survives. And they think that it's going to be fine when it grows. So some facts about IBM also is once these pesticides and stuff have been put on the fruits, they don't always get washed off. Some of them go directly into the fruit and become part of the fruit. They seep in through the skin and it can never be washed off. You literally are eating the pesticides. So now let me explain a little bit about organic foods. Organic foods have a label on them. They're FDA approved. And it's not just a label saying, oh, hey, we didn't put pesticides in this, we didn't give them growth hormones. No, it's actually required by the FDA. Here, they require very many strict laws to help keep their word about being organic. FDA requires all organic products to be free of artificial colors, flavors, sweeteners, preservatives, and ingredients that do not occur naturally in the food. So anything that doesn't occur naturally is not in the food. Any grown and processed organic farming methods must use recycled resources and promote biodiversity. So not using made-up foods or just getting as much food as we can and feeding them low-grade food to our animals so they can grow bigger and faster and be less cost-effective. They actually have to grow organic and stuff like that. So another thing about, let's step into like organic meats versus non-organic meats. So I'm not just talking about fruits. Non-organic meats contain a lot of unwanted hormones to help the cattle grow stronger, to help fight off sickness so they don't lose product, so they don't lose money. So a lot of these stay in the meats. They stay in the animals when they die, when you eat them. High levels of antibiotics and steroids are found in all the time. So as you eat these meats, you are also building up immunities to these hormones, antibiotics, and throwing off your chemical imbalances in your body. So organic meats, which do not have these, are grown with, like I said, FDA, without sweeteners, all that, this. So now let me explain a couple of stats from IPM. Some statistics given by the IPM Institute of North America right off their website. Recent studies documenting the need for continued reductions in hazardous pesticide use and practices include the Heinz Center evaluation of our national ecosystems in 2002. So this was taken in 2002, saying that they need to reduce how much they are using. Reporting that 75% of streams tested have more than 5 pesticide contaminants in it. A 2006 U.S. geological study survived 51 studies over 10 years reported, so this wasn't a one-time study. 96% of fish, 100% of surface water, and 33% of major aquifers sampled from 92 to 2001 contained one or more pesticides. Nearly 10% of stream sites and over 1% of groundwater sites in agricultural areas are and under 7% of streams and 5% of groundwater site in urban areas containing pesticides. That is a lot. It is spreading everywhere. So like I said, buy organics over non-organics. It's going to be better for your health overall. It's going to be better for the economy. You may pay a little more, but it's supporting the organics, and overall, it'll help them grow. Thank you.
Dude, I went over. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I was like, oh shit. Put their last stats up there. You got it, Scott. Tell him, just let it go. What? I know, right? There's my final.
Thank you. All right, Patrick, we have a couple of issues at the beginning that I think create some problems for you later in the speech. I do like the little bit of humor that you use at the beginning is to build some ethos and credibility. I do think that helps. You relate well to the audience, so that's building on that ethos as well. The problem that I have at the beginning is that your proposition is not very clear. We know what your subject is, but we don't know what the end goal is. What is the outcome that you're looking for in the presentation? The contents of the speech are not really previewed for us. We know a little bit about what the controversy is. You define what IPM is, and you talk about what pesticides might represent in terms of risk, but that's about as far as we go when it comes to setting up the structure. Now, that doesn't mean that the body of the speech was entirely unstructured. If you're listening closely, I think you would be able to discern that there are two pretty basic parts of the speech. That IPM is bad and that organic is good are the two competing philosophies that you've got going on here. But I think you need to be a little bit more explicit and declarative in your arguments, especially when you get to the organic argument, because included in that is a discussion of organic meat production, which is completely unrelated to the stuff that you bring up in the first point. Since there's, pesticides are generally not used in raising cattle, that seems a little bit awkward. You kind of switch topics there when you go to that second point, and I think that's a little bit problematic. There's a lot of information here that is based on presupposition. For instance, there's a statistic that you use that says, that people at the IPM group say that the risk is down below 1%. I think that's a characterization on your part. I didn't hear a quote on that. And you take that as a base point for making an argument that says, look, I wouldn't want to be in that 1%. Well, the idea that the risk is less than 1% is a characterization that you've created. I didn't hear IPM saying that that was in fact their estimate of the risk factor. And the exposure level and whether or not that means that we got a 1% risk of being exposed to those things, does that mean that we also have a 1% risk of all of the bad things that are going on? This is the place where I think your argument needs a lot more development. You've got a legitimate criticism here, but it doesn't seem to me like you've integrated the evidence into it as effectively as you could, and there are blank spots in the argument. The idea that IPM has limitations, I think that that's okay. You do kind of give us some general explanation about some of the problems that IPM presents. That's all right. In the back end of the speech, you've got a whole set of information about contaminants and how pesticides end up in a variety of other places that are potentially dangerous. Again, I think that the fact that there is pesticide in all of those sources, it's sort of like that argument that that I don't know the statistic exactly, so I might be exaggerating a little bit, but 95% of all money has cocaine residue on it. It may not be exactly that statistic, but it's pretty close to that. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to get high or busted because they have cash in their pocket. You got to be a little bit careful about assuming that because there's pesticide residue has been found in the water that it's at a threat level. I'm not sure that there's any. You could make an argument that there's no safe level whatsoever, but that needs to be part of your argument. All right, so put that in your argument and say that any exposure, by the way, that means that we're all screwed because 96% of our water is already contaminated, so we're all doomed. So, this is interesting for us to pass on to our future generations as opposed to ourselves. I think you got to be a little bit careful about making it as drastic as you're suggesting at the beginning and then suggesting that being organic is going to change that. I think that that's a little bit problematic. The Heinz study that gets referred to at the end has some of that data in it, and it seems to me like that should have been earlier in the speech. That should have been in that first point instead of at the end point there, telling us what is problematic about the use of pesticides. It's a little awkward because it sounds to me like there are three categories that we're talking about. There is traditional use of pesticides, there's integrated pest management, and then there's organic, and that all of your criticism seems to be with the attempt to address the traditional uses of pesticides, and because IPM gets labeled in your argument for the most part. If you're saying that IPM is inadequate, it's insufficient, it's not protecting us enough, make that your proposition, and I think that you could make a clearer argument on it. Like I said, when you get to the argument about the meat and whether or not it's organic, now we're talking about a whole bunch, that's a whole different can of worms. That's a separate argument that needs a lot more development than you're going to be able to give it time here.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.